All right, I think we're on.
Speaking of live, you watching the fights? Do you watch the MMA fights?
Yeah,
Yeah.
not all the time, but
Conor McGregor's on tomorrow
I
night.
know. Yeah, I want to see that. Yeah,
Yeah, we're gonna find a bar to go to. I'm not paying $60 for it.
I know. Yeah, I'm thinking about shelling out the money there because I love anytime he's up. I just from his personality, he talks so much smack, so you want to see him in the ring.
Yeah,
just to see what happens.
Such a great entertainer for sure, and
Absolutely.
marketer for that matter.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
All right,
here we go. Let's go 3. All right, here we go. All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of Persuasion by the Pint. I'm Jonathan Taylor, along with
Sean McCool.
Sean, today we're going to be covering, probably won't be as long as the last episode, but we'll be covering a few.
I don't know, man. Who knows? No promises.
It's easy to get off on a tangent, man, when you got somebody, somebody talking, you talking shop with someone. Time flies.
I mean, that's how this whole show started, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So we're going to be talking about some headlines or some ad copy
classic ads, yeah.
Some classic and some new, some old and new. Yeah. How about that? Yeah. Something old, something new, something borrowed,
something blue. Yeah. I don't
know. So we got some random stuff to share, but trust me, it'll be some good takeaway on copywriting, marketing, all that good stuff. So
Absolutely.
Stay tuned. But before we get there, we have to do our customary taste test.
Yeah. So I've got some. I told you on the last episode, I'm kind of clearing out the beer fridge at this time. So,
yep.
So I've got 2 different beers that I've talked about before on the show, but they're both from our sponsors over at the Original Craft Beer Club.
Mm-hmm.
So wanted to, on the last show, I had a bourbon barrel ale and I had some Guinness, which is not a craft beer, but hey, it's a dark beer.
Mm-hmm.
So keeping with that idea, I've got some porters and stouts that I'll be draining on this episode, both which came from River Horse Brewing.
Mm-hmm.
Remember the old?
Oh yeah, I remember that one.
The hippos.
Yep.
Yeah. So they like their hippos, which is a that's what a river horse is, I guess. Is a hippo. Who knew?
That's right.
I'll let you do the little spiel for the Original Craft Beer Club.
So this segment of our episode is brought to you by our friends over at the Original Craft Beer Club. Outstanding craft beers from the finest independent microbreweries in America. So one of the best ways to sample these unique beers is by letting the Original Craft Beer Club do all the legwork by tasting and bringing some of the best beer discoveries in the country straight to your door. And they do this by ways of membership. So you can sign up. You don't have to do a monthly. You can do bi-monthly, bringing it right to your door. You always have something unique, something different that you can sample and you can kind of showcase to all your buddies when you bring them over. This is great during the holidays. I give these gift cards away because people like to some people, in the craft brew community, they're kind of beer snobs. They like something different all the time, kind of like us.
Yeah.
And they like a little variety, and they get on these little apps and they compete with one another about how many unique beers they've had.
Yeah, because a lot of these are very regional, so you can't just go down to the store and pick them up. Even a place like Total Wine that brings in a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The distribution's just not there for some of these companies. So this week, my beer that, like I said, I've had this before, but is River Horse. They're out of New Jersey.
Yeah,
River Horse Brewing.
That's right.
The hippo. And so this first one I'm having today is a milk stout.
Yes.
And, we're talking about something old, something new, something barred, something blue.
There we go.
Got a blue label on it. So there we go.
It's a light blue.
So this is a oatmeal milk stout, and it is 6.7% alcohol by volume. I've already had a 16.3 and a Guinness today. So Guinness is like 5.5. But
oh yeah. Yeah,
So no telling what happens in this episode. I can't, can't promise anything coherent.
There you go. Well, that's why we're making it short.
Yeah. So,
all right,
but we're not going anywhere tonight. So I checked with the wife. We're not going
good.
out. Yeah, she's driving. We are.
All right, so I've got another Oscar Blues. I had
one
on the last episode. This one is
which you rated really high. Like, so
I did 4.6.
High expectations here.
4.6. 4.6. I love the coconut. I had to. I think I actually have a little bit of coconut. I thought I'd washed my glass out completely, but I see a little bit of. I see a little bit remaining of the death by coconut. So
yeah,
which may be good with this, but I've got a 1050.
1050, baby.
1050, baby. Now I had one of these. I had a 1050 from Oscar Blues last month. I think maybe back November, December. It was just a straight imperial stout. This is a barrel aged. This one's a little different. This is a barrel aged imperial stout.
Taking it up a notch.
Taking it up a notch. So
taking it up $3 or $4 per
exactly. That's right. All of these Oscar, man, these guys do the best marketing ever.
Yeah.
Because they give you a little box. It's a 4-pack in a really cool looking box, because they make it like it's all that, that minimal feel with a small box, but they cram 4 beers in there, so you feel and they make you pay more for 4 beers in a tiny box just because of the packaging looks great. And it's just that it's like that whole Apple approach, man. We'll shell out, $15 for a 4-pack. I'm the idiot. I'm the one that's should be made fun of, not them, right?
Yeah, exactly. You could go just a case of Coors Light, or you could just get a 4-pack of Oscar Blues.
Exactly. But no, I gotta show off on the show, and drink a 12.5%.
Whoa,
that's part of it. I'm paying for that.
Man, those bourbon barrel, man, that's serious stuff. Like, that's what I had on the last episode. It's bourbon barrel, 16.3. So you're doing a 12.5, like
12.5.
There's no telling where this show's going.
So it says big, bad, and barrel aged. This imperial stout camped out for 4 seasons in bourbon, whiskey, oak barrels before reaching absolute perfection. Aromas of molasses and vanilla mixed with flavors of dark chocolate, espresso beans, and roasted barley to bring you a bold yet smooth finish that leaves a hint of toasty bourbon goodness. Now I've got a little espresso going with the bourbon, so that'll help offset a little bit of this 12 and a half, maybe.
That is some. Let me see that can. I got to go get some of that. It's just like a black can. I like that.
Yeah, it's very dark.
I think I've had that before.
Probably so.
It looks very familiar. I think I've had that before. I think they stock that in the coolers at Casual Pint. Oh, good stuff.
It smells so good.
So good. All right. So while you're pouring that, so we're going to be talking about a couple of classic ads, and we're going to talk about a company that's like, I got to say, some of the boldest marketing. Mm-hmm. Like how a lot of people, Jonathan, are afraid to take one side or the other.
Oh yeah.
This company is not afraid of that. And in fact, they're doubling down on it.
Absolutely.
And I think
it pays off to have, to try to be in the middle and not, just try to.
They're definitely not, and they're definitely not in the middle.
Yeah.
Controversy
is sometimes good, man.
Yeah. So we'll save that one for last. But to see what a company is currently doing, I don't know their numbers or anything like that. Maybe we should reach out to the owners, see if we can have them on. But like, you talk about just so many people are afraid to do this in their marketing. And so that's why I sent it to you, Jonathan. It's like, this is a great example of people just like, I'm going all in on this idea.
Oh, absolutely.
I know I'm going to get crucified by at least half the market, but the other half is going to absolutely love me. And, you can see that happening. So we'll talk about that at the end of kind of towards the end of the episode.
Mhm.
But we're going to talk about 2 classics. And when you sent this to me, Jonathan, you were like, "Hey, you think this would still work these days,
Yes.
or how would we have to modify it, or would anything have to change to make these ads work today?" So,
Mhm. Yes. It's
um,
an ad from the 70s, very famous. A lot of people recognize it once we
especially our audience.
bring
Our
it up.
audience is very bright,
Very
very
sad.
astute, very
Absolutely.
savvy, very studied, historical.
Yep.
So they're probably very familiar with this. But it's always good to go back and look and see, what are the principles behind the success of this, and how do
Yep.
we adapt those principles, if not the exact stuff,
Mhm. Yeah.
to today's market.
Absolutely.
But before we do that, got to hear from
We got a
you.
toast. We got a toast.
We got a toast, and then we got to hear from you about your rating.
That's right. That's right. Because I went ahead and tasted because
Oh yeah, of
we're
course.
taking too long to toast.
Yeah.
All right, here we go. Cheers. Oh, love that sound. All right. So you gave that a good rating, I think, from what I remember.
I can't remember, and I don't want to say another rating because I contradict myself.
Yeah, somebody might.
It's like my third beer today. It's like my
Right.
third beer over our
Sure.
recording session here, so it's probably off anyway. So I've got a backup. I got another River Horse Brewing as a backup once while you're talking that I can. It's a chocolate porter.
Oh wow,
that I will break out.
You are loaded.
Yeah, so I got my bottle keeper here to keep it cold.
Nice, I like it.
Yeah, so good stuff. So, what do you rate your new and improved, high end, overpriced 50 whatever?
I'm kind of like what you said last episode. It's a little strong,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's good, but after having the Death by Coconut last one was really good.
Yeah.
And I think maybe that's probably what's hurting this one a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Is if I had started this one, it probably would have gotten a better rating. So it's no fault to them, but I'm going to have to give this one like a 3, probably 3.5. I mean, it's not terrible, but it's just not as good.
Yeah, it's hard to follow up. The new girlfriend's got a lot to live up to.
Yeah, it is.
Depending on who dumped too. Depending on who dumped too, it's tough.
I think it's the I don't know. I think it's the.
And when you start getting into that 10 plus range on the ABV, the alcohol starts coming through. I think that's part of it. I think the sweet spot is that 8 point ABV, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
Like you get the flavors, you get all that stuff, but yeah, you start getting above 10.
I think there's too much. I'll be honest with you. I think there's too much oak and the oak and bourbon is coming way too strong in this. So
should have pulled it out at 3 years, huh? Stayed in there a little.
That's right. Yeah.
4 seasons was a little too much.
They left it in a little too long.
Yeah,
so
don't want that. All right, so let's talk about where do you want to start? You want to start with Lazy Man or Victor?
Let's start with Lazy Man. Lazy Man. So
Lazy Man.
Sean, I sent this over to Sean earlier for our second episode, doing a little show prep, and we were talking about. I just mentioned, would an ad like this work today, right? I mean, because this is an ad back from '79, and I probably should pull up let's do the screen share here.
The old screen share.
All right.
So if you're listening on podcast, you might want to go over to our YouTube channel, subscribe there.
There you go.
Persuasion by the Pint over at the old YouTubes, and you'll be able to see the ad. A lot of, especially if you're a copywriter, you're probably familiar with this. I actually have the book up here on the shelf behind me. The entire 7 Steps to Freedom, which is I think that was Joe Carbo, wasn't it? Or was that no, that was Ben Suarez. That's different. My bad. Different. Yeah, that was different.
Yeah.
But yeah, this ad, "The Lazy Man's Way to Riches," is the headline. Subhead: most people are too busy earning a living to make any money.
Right.
I gotta say, so my first response is I absolutely think that would still work today.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that
And
is,
I think the sub headline still works really well.
yeah. I
But my
might just,
question is does the main headline, do people look at that today like they did 30, 40 years ago and say, okay, wow, yeah, that's a
yeah, so yeah, let's talk about like why do we think that worked? Like,
Mhm.
so my theory is like nobody wants to be the lazy guy, right?
Right.
But it's kind of like the opposite of hyperbole that we've talked about so many times before, right? If you go over the top and you kind of dial it back, you're like, well, it may not be that, but if I dial it back, I think this is the same thing from the other perspective.
Sure.
Like, I don't consider myself lazy. So if it works for a lazy guy,
Hmm.
surely it'll work for me too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I kind of think it would still work. Um, I
See,
don't know.
part of me thinks it would, but then there's an element to the fact that I think people are more, and you're not marketing everybody, obviously. So,
Mhm.
you send an ad like this, you're not chasing everybody. And so you
Right.
have to keep that in mind. But part of me thinks there's in today's age with the internet where people have like, you know, so many get rich quick type things have kind of come and gone. But then you have to lean over to the fact that human nature by trade wants to get something for nothing, right? I mean, because
Yeah.
that's human nature. So
Yeah.
I don't think the ad in of itself, I think the ad will work really well today. I'm just not sure about that headline. And I guess that was my biggest question.
I don't know. I think it would. And if you look at like what's going on in this ad, if we read the first couple lines, it says, I used to work hard, the 18-hour days, the 7-day weeks, but I didn't start making big money until I did less, a
Right.
lot
A
less.
lot less. Yeah.
So I think this could still really resonate with this whole hustle and grind 24/7
Sure.
entrepreneur crowd.
Right.
I think there's a segment of that crowd that is just exhausted,
Hmm.
right? And they've been told that if you just hustle a little harder, you work a little longer. I think this is just
Sure.
like you said, human nature, right? Like
Mhm.
I don't care if you're in corporate America,
Yeah.
when you're in your 20s, like you're willing to do the 60, 80 hours a week, but then you start getting a family, you start wanting a social life, like you start to realize like, hey, what I'm doing is
Yeah.
not really working. I'm
Absolutely.
exhausted, I'm worn out, and things like that. So if somebody comes along and says and takes that, I mean, this is the lazy man's way to riches is still hyperbole. It's just hyperbole on the downside, I
Oh,
guess,
sure.
right?
Yeah.
So I think it's the same concept. I think it's like you dial it back, you're like, well, it's probably not really like lazy, and
Hmm.
I'm not lazy. Like I'm
Right.
willing to do some work.
Sure.
So if it worked for a lazy guy, surely it'll work for me because I'm willing to do a
Absolutely.
little bit of work.
Yeah.
I just don't want to work as hard as I've been working now.
Right.
And I think that's where it immediately kind of the first couple lines there,
Hmm.
it like really resonates with people.
Yep.
And the subhead is, I think the subhead word for word still works. Most people
Oh,
are
I
too
do
busy
too.
earning a living
Yeah.
to make any money. Like that just feels right.
Yeah. And you can
Um,
picture yourself. You're kind of on that hamster wheel.
yeah,
You're so busy with life that doing so many things and so many responsibilities, but you're always making ends meet.
yeah.
So,
And,
uh,
and yet you see these guys, Elon Musk's and Jeff
yeah.
Bezos of the world who are like they
Hmm.
got the same 24 hours and somehow they're billionaires. And
Sure.
here you are, same 24 hours and you're making,
Right.
maybe, high five, maybe low six figures.
Sure.
It's like it can't especially if you've already made six figures. I think there's something that happens when you make six figures, low six figures, you're like you can effort your way and you
Hmm.
can hustle your way and you can grind your way to six figures.
Yeah.
But then you get to the point you're like, okay, it's not just about how hard I work. It's got to be a little bit like you start to realize at that point that it's a little bit more than that, right? It's
Right.
it's there's something else
Yep.
that happens and you
Hmm.
don't know what it is exactly, but you realize it's not just putting in extra time because there's only 24 hours in a day.
Yeah.
So I think that's why this works is people kind of intuitively know that um, it doesn't matter how hard I work, it doesn't seem to be enough time and I can't get ahead.
Right.
It's the same thing like those guys that, building $1 million business is, or even up to 10 million is one type of business, but to break 10 million, you've got to start implementing systems and organizational
Absolutely.
charts and like all kinds of stuff. Like you need an actual team, you need all this other stuff. You can't just out hustle your way past that $10 million mark if it's a business, or that, low to mid 6-figure mark. Like I think you can get 250 these days. You could do 250 as a single entrepreneur, self-employed, freelancer type. You could probably get, in that $150,000 a year range. But to get beyond that, you got to do something different.
Absolutely.
Like what got you there won't get you to the next stage.
And that's kind of, we were talking about, last week's episode, we were kind of previewing an article from, or an ad from that one, from, the one on blockchain, and so what that had all of the elements. It may not have used, like, obviously it didn't use lazy man's way to riches, but it did use a lot of the elements of, like, hey, are you still, do you want to jump onto something that's going to make money for you, or do you want to still just work, chasing the dream, or trading your time for dollars and all of that, so
Well,
I think everybody has this, this dream of being able to kick back and have money, have their money work for them and bring in more money. That's every guy's dream. It's like, just if only I had the right investment that could just pour in money for me, 24/7.
Yeah, and I love his first 2 sentences were, I used to work hard, or the first 3 sentences, I guess. I used to work hard, the 18-hour days, the 7-day weeks. But I didn't start making big money until I did less, right? So that's a very like counterintuitive, like, okay, tell me about this less thing. And then he immediately gives an example. For example, this ad took about 2 hours to write. With a little luck, it should earn me $50, maybe $100,000.
Yeah.
Like that's a whole different world.
Yeah.
Then, even if you're making good money. I remember my wife used to work for a plastic surgeon, and he made really good money, but he would even admit, when I sat down and talked with him, he's like, yeah, I'm still blue collar. Like if I don't show up for work and if I don't use my hands to cut people, even though I may make $1,000 or $2,000 or, $5,000 an hour, I have to show up to do that as a surgeon.
Right.
I still have to show up. Like it's still my time. I can't leverage it.
Yep.
Whereas, and that's kind of what this ad is getting at, is like you can leverage skills that can then go out and be duplicated, and, the skills kind of work for you and all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I think that's, and like, I think people get that intuitively. They know I can't work any harder. So it's got to be something about, I've got to make either more per hour I work, or I've got to, there's got to be some type of residual type income or something. It's why multi-level marketing, despite all the complaints, keeps working, because everybody wants to believe that if I could just get to that residual point, that's how you get rich.
Absolutely. So what are, outside of the headline and the sub headline, what are maybe a couple of things that immediately you take away from this ad? They're like, okay, this is why this was, and this was a very effective ad. I mean, this one sold, this sold a ton of well, originally it was for the book, right? The Lazy Man's Guide to Riches.
Yeah.
But then that would upsell people from that point.
And different, like work from home programs, direct mail programs, things like that.
Yep.
Yeah, I think
extremely successful. So what are some things, just looking at the ad itself, outside of the headline, the sub headline, that are really powerful?
Yeah, so it's funny. I just did a training on this with some of the at the agency I work at. Actually, the membership that we have for people who aren't in the agency, but some of the one of the membership groups that I did a training for. We were talking about leads and how that first, 10, 15, 30, up to 30% of the entire promo is what we would consider the lead.
Yep.
It's where you set the hook and you really get the idea. And I think that's what's really done well. And it's the stuff I've already read. It's like, number one, you enter the conversation already going on in their mind, right?
Sure.
They know they work hard. They're working long days. So you're not writing to people who are on welfare, sitting at home,
Right. No.
not doing anything, right? You're writing, your avatar is somebody who's already working hard. They're willing to do the work. They're going above and beyond, but they're just not getting ahead.
Sure.
Right? So you kind of enter that conversation. God, I'm already working hard, but it's still not paying off. Right.
Yeah.
So that's what the first two sentences do. I used to work hard, the 18-hour day, or the first three sentences, the 7-day weeks. Right. It's like, oh, wow, this guy understands me. Like I'm working hard. I work 18-hour days. I work 7 days a week.
Yeah.
And even if I don't, like if I work 6 days a week and I work 12-hour days, like I understand that this guy gets me. I'm a hard worker. I'm not slouching. I'm not waiting on the couch for my welfare check. Like I'm working. But then, and then he immediately flips everything on its head when he says, but I didn't start making big money until I did less.
Yeah.
A lot less.
Right.
So now you've set up this whole like earth shattering, paradigm shattering, completely new way of looking at the world. Wait. You actually made more money when you did less?
Yeah.
That's not what I've been taught. That's not how I was raised. Especially when you think about when this went out in the 70s, right? It was still about, there wasn't much leverage. There wasn't the internet to where you could leverage and reach the world and things like that. I mean, there was direct mail, which is what he's going to talk about.
Right.
But for most people, if they couldn't serve their little area or show up at a job site, they could only serve those people. They didn't know about serving people around the country or around the world like we just take for granted today. So I think that was just a completely new paradigm for people.
Yeah.
And then he immediately gives a piece of proof. For example, this ad took 2 hours to write. With a little luck, it'll make me $50,000, maybe $100,000.
Right.
It's like, wow, 2 hours, $50,000 to $100,000. Like, holy crap! Like that's, I'd have to work all year for that. And he's going to make that in 2 hours.
Yep.
Now, obviously, there's a lot of details. There's a lot of stuff, but the hook is set in those first three paragraphs.
Curiosity. Right.
Like you got to know more about what this guy's talking about.
Yeah. And one thing that even before the headline, if I zoom in, I'm going to zoom in this so you can see it, which we've talked about this before. This is really powerful because you see this word Ottawa Journal. So obviously this was written in a some type of local newspaper. So this is advertorial.
Before they made you say it was an advertorial too.
Right.
So that, you can't get away with that now, but that was definitely, and that definitely helped.
But you can do an advertorial like this.
Absolutely.
You just have to say that this is an ad, right? Back then you didn't. But these are still so powerful. Even David, who we had on, David Dutton, who we had on a couple of episodes back, that was like, he talked about in that episode about his book, that the ad that he did, and this was not even in a major this was like the local, he lives over in Spring Hill, Tennessee. So this was like the local newspaper there, which, a lot of these local newspapers only publish the newspaper like maybe, once or twice a week, so, but he got the advertorial in that. So, and it was powerful, because it was featuring his book. So you can still do these today, but you just have to, they have to be, it's got to say that it's an ad at the end of it, but most people don't even look at that, right?
No, they don't. They kind of look past it. And and there's a couple, Sky Mall magazine, typically when I fly Delta, and they have Sky Mall magazine, and there's a there's a dating service that always has a full page ad in there,
Right.
and their ad is just, it looks just like, infographic, like it just looks like a piece of the magazine. Like it doesn't
Yep.
look like an
It does.
advertorial. You could be halfway through it
Mhm.
and not even realize it's an ad, and
Yeah.
that's kind of the magic of it. I think another thing that made this work is just, and we've talked about this recently, is the authenticity and transparency and all that kind of stuff. So as soon as he says, took me about 2 hours to write, I'll make $100,000.
Yeah.
He immediately goes in and telling them exactly what he's going to do.
Right.
He's like, what's more, I'm going to ask you to send me $10
Mhm.
for something that'll cost me no more than 50 cents.
Right.
And I'll try to make it so irresistible that you'll be a darn fool not to do it.
Mhm.
After all, why would you care if I make a $9.50 profit if I can show you how to make a lot more?
Yeah.
Like, so super upfront and transparent,
Sure.
which is,
The fact that he mentions it up front too is powerful, because it kind of takes away, because what are we kind of wired to every time we read an ad today?
Yeah,
We're
we're skeptical,
wired
right?
to, we're waiting for the pitch at the end.
Yeah, like, what's in it for you? Like, how
Right.
and he just says right up front, like,
Yep.
hey, I'm gonna ask you for $10 for something that's cost me 50 cents.
Absolutely.
It's like, oh wow, that's it's kind of similar to the thing we're going to talk about
Mhm.
last. The company that's like really bold and upfront about what they're doing.
Right.
Like, this is the same kind of thing. It's like he's super bold and upfront,
Mhm.
super, like not hiding anything.
Nope.
And it's like just right out there. And I think a lot of people are afraid to do that these days. And there's even some copywriting techniques. They're like, no, you can't. You don't want to. You want to kind of disguise your offer, leave it for the end. You got to build up to it,
Right.
and I think that's true sometimes. But I think there's times when it makes sense to just lay out there what you're doing.
Mhm.
And I think that obviously this worked, and I think more people could do that. So
I think his rags to riches, like going up here, is powerful, especially, he puts it in quotes, so it kind of stands out a little right before he hits to the bullets. I didn't have a job, and I
yeah,
was worse than broke. I owed more than 50,000, which is, I mean, in 1979 is like owing what, 100,000.
yeah, a lot.
And the only assets I had were my wife and 8 children. 8 children. We were renting an old house in a decaying neighborhood, driving a 5-year-old car that was falling apart, and had maybe a couple of $100 in the bank. So that's
Yeah,
always good. If you can start where you were
yeah,
and progress to where you are now, within a month after using the principles of the lazy man's way to riches, things started to change, to put it mildly. So, and then he puts out the bullet points. He's got 2 boats, a Cadillac, which, you get, today stuff like that doesn't, 2 boats are a Cadillac. You're probably thinking, today I own a home in, in Maui or someplace like that,
yeah.
something a little more impressive, that people are thinking. But I mean, you get the point. I drive I've got a 3 Ferraris, or what is it? The guy that, what's his name, that does a lot of the Facebook ads, that walks around his mansion and shows everybody, like he's got like,
Ty Lopez.
yeah, that's it. Yeah. Yeah. So people, it's kind of the same thing, but it's in video format, and people are like, and he gets all these negative comments. But the fact that those ads continue to run,
Mhm.
time after time after time, show that those things work. And,
Yeah,
people are just applying this ad that's from 1979. I mean, basically is a Ty Lopez ad, on Facebook in video format.
yeah. Now Ty is, I mean, literally,
Sure.
buying formerly billion-dollar brands and that have gone bankrupt and
Yep.
bringing them into the internet age and
Mhm.
scaling them up and making
Right.
them online, getting rid of the brick and mortar, bringing them
Yep.
online, and like
Mhm.
it's working. And
Yeah.
yeah, so it's but using the principles of direct response and all that stuff. But yeah, this
Yep.
is this is the kind of, I mean, it's like we've said 100 times on this show. Like, even if people cut these numbers in half or these results in half, they're like, that would be good. right? Like I could live with that. Like if
Sure.
I didn't pay off all my debts, but I paid off half my debts, or if I wasn't driving a brand new car and I was driving a car that I want and it was paid for, or if my bank account didn't multiply tenfold, but it multiplied fivefold. Heck, if there was just money left over at the end of the month, I'd be happy.
Absolutely.
And if it took me 60 days instead of 30 days, I'd be happy. Like, so even though these are huge claims, like I think a lot of people, I think that you just
some people can't envision that because they're not there. So you have to understand who your target market is. For some of your audience, an extra $1,000 a month, just making, especially in this day and time with COVID, so many people out of work. What does an extra $1,000 a month mean? That's huge. So you have to put it in their terms depending on who you're targeting.
Yeah, I mean, I tell my copywriters that I critique their stuff. I was like, you got to dimensionalize this stuff, right? So
absolutely,
it's not $1,000 a month. It's like you take care of both car payments, right? So you do a little research, you find out the average car payment is $320, and you realize $1,000 could take care of 2 car payments and the electricity bill, right? Well, what would be how much how much weight would that take off your shoulders if you knew both your car payments and your electricity bill every month were taken care of,
right?
Or your grocery bill plus whatever was taken care of every month.
Sure.
So you don't have to go all the way to the extreme that he did in this. And I think today you could, but I think it also people are looking for a little bit more. There's definitely the crowd that wants all this stuff that's kind of mentioned in this ad, but there's also the crowd that's just like, man, if I could just get through this month and have a little left over, I'd be happy.
Right.
So you kind of have to know who you're marketing to.
Yeah. Demographics and
one of the ads.
You feel like millennials, like the younger group, are probably, and I know not, you can talk a lot like millennials all you want to and say, well, millennials are this, but we both go back to what we started with at the beginning. We like to start with human nature, and we know that human nature probably never changes. I mean, it's usually that's the one consistency, is that people, obviously want something for nothing, but you can put it in their terms. A younger person is trying to envision a life without having college debt hanging over them. So it's like, what if you could make enough to basically pay off your student loan, loan debt that's been hovering over your head, pay that off in like 1 year, so it just, it, like you said, it depends on who you're, you
need to know your avatar and what's weighing them down. I did a training on this yesterday.
Right.
And I mean, like the training just kept going on because I was really trying to help people see, like, you got to dimensionalize this stuff for your target market.
Sure.
For one person, it's going to be, I got to say I'm behind on retirement and I got to catch up on retirement. For another person, like you said, Jonathan, it's like, man, if I could just pay off this student loan,
right,
it would allow me to travel or do whatever I want, whatever that thing is, start a family, all this stuff. Like it could be totally different. But it all boils down to the same thing. I'm behind on where I thought I would be.
Yeah.
And if I could just get out of this hole, I could finally do something with my life.
Right.
That's the basic.
No one is ever content where they currently are. I mean, that's another human nature thing, is like, I don't care where you are. You could be a millionaire, but guess what? You're not a billionaire.
Yeah.
So you're never content in the situation that you're in. So you just got to know, what your market situation is.
Yeah. You got a 50-foot, like, yacht, 50-foot yacht or cabin cruiser. And you're on the lake here at Lake Travis or up there in Knoxville. And it's like, all of a sudden 150-foot, yacht passes. You're like, crap.
Yeah.
I thought I had a nice boat.
I thought I was at the top of I thought I had reached the top, but this guy.
I mean, it's just impossible for us as humans to, not impossible. It's very difficult for us as humans to not compare ourselves to the next level. So you can take advantage. I mean, you can take advantage of that and copy. And that's really all marketing is. I mean, it's whether you agree with that or not. I mean, you're kind of tapping into that. Like, you're not going to stop that from happening.
Yeah.
So you can either tap into it or not.
That's right. That's
as
right.
a marketer.
You can't just say, you know what, you really should be just content with the what you have achieved and where you are in life, because that's not gonna, I mean, most people, from that
You should really stick with that 26-inch console TV from your grandparents.
right.
You don't need the flat screen 50-inch TV.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, you're just
Who
not gonna.
needs that, right?
Yeah, you don't need that. I mean, it's true. You don't really need that, but so
that's right. Who
um,
buys based on needs, right?
yeah,
Exactly.
I mean, everything is I would say 95% of the stuff we buy on a day-to-day basis is not necessity. So
all right, well, you want to let's look at some we've got an ad. Do you want to jump on to the let's see, we were going to talk about, why don't we, just for sake of time, because I do want to cover some of the Victor Schwab stuff.
Yeah, okay.
But if we run out of time, I want to hit this because you sent me a link to this ad, which I want.
Yeah, well, let's go into Victor Schwab. So you sent me a link to, I don't know where this came from, Copywriting Secrets.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Did you want to look? Is there an actual ad, or you just want to talk about kind of the idea, the 5 fundamentals of a good advertisement?
Yeah, let's share that. I want to share this. Here we go. Stop screen.
So once again, like if you're not following us on YouTube, you're missing out.
That's right. That's right.
You don't see, you don't see our faces if you're just listening on podcast,
which is a shame.
And then 2, every once in a while we do screen shares, and you're missing out.
Absolutely. All right, here we go. I'm pulling it up. Screen share screen. Yes. All right.
You're such a tech wizard. There we go. I love how in StreamYard it like does this like psychedelic screen within a screen within a screen within a screen before it actually shows it. It's kind of
wild. They don't give you a chance to switch over pages, or at least not that I know of. But here we are. So if you haven't read this book, and I gotta hold this up, one of my favorite, and this is like a reference, one of my reference guides. I'm gonna make sure I switch.
Yeah, if you had like one of those, like a shelf that's near your desk as a marketer, this would be one of the books I think that should be within arm's reach.
And it's called How to Write a Good Advertisement, a Short Course in Copywriting by Victor Schwab. This book has been around for a long time, but I'm going to tell you, it's got all of the fundamentals, and written back in 1962.
Wow.
But advertising and copywriting genius, Victor Schwab outlined the 5 principles for writing a good advertisement. So if you get anything from this episode, here's 5 things that are memorable that you should take away.
Yeah. So number 1 is to get attention.
Okay.
All right. So we're in everybody is like so scattered these days, right? So they're constantly scrolling. I mean, like the thumb, people can just blow by your ad with just like a swipe of their thumb. Like it's just crazy, right? It's not like everybody's, in the 1970s or even 80s for that matter, when we grew up, Jonathan, where you have to watch the commercials.
Right. You
can skip the commercials. You can scroll past the commercials. There's so many ways to get past that now, that in the, 60s, 70s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, like you just kind of had to sit through them and you had to watch them.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe you could switch channels, but even like, late 70s, early 80s, it's like, remotes weren't that popular. It's like, your dad was like, Jonathan, get up, change the channel. Like, it just wasn't worth it. Like, you just waited out the commercial.
That's right.
So you knew the commercial was going to get seen. And that's just
unless you were a child of the 80s where you recorded them on your VCR.
Right? Oh, man. But you had to know how to work the VCR. Nobody knew how to work those things.
That's right. The fast forward button, that was just like no one knew where that was. So
yeah, I mean, all we knew how to do is rewind, because you get a fee at Blockbusters if you didn't send it back rewound, right?
Exactly.
Please be kind and rewind.
Yep.
People
that's like, good. You remember that tagline?
I do. That was a very powerful tagline. So yeah, so like you got to get attention. Like you got to, it's got to catch people's attention. Because I mean, one thing people did even back when they had to sit through commercials was, that was the time you jumped up and got snacks or went to the bathroom or whatever, right?
Right.
So you got to get people's attention. And that's just human nature. Like
And you
even
got to
if you,
admit the ad that we just showcased, Lazy Man's, okay, that gets attention, right?
Mhm.
Even in today's time, that would get attention. That might get some negative attention, but that'll get attention. So, I mean,
yeah, and so we were at the agency I work with. We were having, we were talking about images for Facebook.
mhm,
Because it's one thing to have good copy on the Facebook ad, but if you don't have a good image, it's not going to stop people from
right.
scrolling with their thumb, right?
Mhm,
They just kind of flick the wheel of their Facebook feed, and you can just scroll right past. So
yep,
we were trying to figure out, like, okay, what images stop the scroll first
mhm,
and get their attention.
yeah,
And one thing that I've seen that has been getting my attention, and that's really how I do a lot of this stuff, is like, okay, what's working on me?
mhm,
And I think as a marketer, you have to be in tune. I remember when I was writing copy at Stansberry, my copy chief, he was like, "You got to develop." And James Patterson talked about this. Like, you got to develop this gut where you notice what stops you and what interests you,
yeah,
and then use that to put out into the marketplace.
yep,
So I noticed on Facebook, one of the things that tends to stop my scroll is these black and white photos, because everybody else is doing color photos or
sure.
cartoon photos or whatever. So a nice black and white photography
Mhm.
tends to stop and
Stops
slow me
people.
down.
Right.
So I was telling my ad buyers, I was like, let's try some black and white photos that really
Mhm.
show some emotion or show some art or show whatever,
Yeah.
and see if that makes a difference.
Right.
Um, so I'll check back in with people and let know. But I know that's recently been stopping me. So that's one way to get attention, is a really good
Sure.
image or a really good headline. And I
Mhm.
think these days, because so much of what we, Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, it's all
Mhm.
image based.
Yeah.
And then you read the copy.
Absolutely.
So it's got to be a
Can't
good
think of, I
image.
mean, there's so many ads, unfortunately, even, marketers, people that are in sales and marketing fall prey to them. But
Mhm.
you put a good image of your product on there and it's almost impossible to not click away.
Or your avatar, an image of your avatar kind of experiencing whatever emotion the problem brings up, right? So
Yeah.
that's what I suggested to my ad buyers today. I was like, let's find some black and white photos
Mhm.
that express the emotion of the problem that they're facing that we're going to solve.
Right. Yep. Absolutely. All right. Next. So get their attention. You still there, Sean? I lose you. I don't hear your audio. There we go. Are you there? Hello, Sean.
Okay, there we
There
are.
we go. You're back.
I accidentally hit my headphone jack, and I think it flipped the old switch on the microphone.
You
So
ripped it out. Yeah.
ripped
You
it out.
just.
So excited about this stuff. Just ripped it right out. All right. So number
All
two
right.
is just
Next.
show people an advantage.
Advantage. Okay. Easy enough, right? Show people the advantage of your product.
Yep. So the advantage,
Prove it.
like we talked about in the last ad, is like work less, make more money.
Mhm.
And then going into number three, prove it, is like
Yep.
he gave an example. Hey, I'm writing this ad. It'll take me 2 hours. I'll make $50,000.
Yep.
So you
Totally.
give some type of proof, whether it's either your own experience or a third party proof or testimonial, whatever it might be.
He owns 2 boats and a Cadillac.
There you go.
Notice the age of the ad. He owned a $250,000 house. Compare.
Yeah. I mean, that's probably
today you can't. Yeah, it's like today. It's like okay, you live in the projects in New York City, right?
yeah. I mean, today, like you do the inflation numbers, it's probably $500,000, $750,
Right.
$1,000 house. But
Yeah, that's right.
and then
Prove it.
Yeah. So prove it is like giving them an example. Like I said, like, hey, this ad took me 2 hours to write.
Sure.
I'll make $100,000 off of it. And then number 4 is persuade people to grasp this advantage. I think that's where you have to kind of dimensionalize, what I call dimensionalizing, what Clayton Makepeace called dimensionalizing, where you get people to see how that shows up in their life. like we were talking about earlier. Like,
Sure.
imagine being able to pay off your student loans,
Right.
not being under a cloud of debt so you can travel the world.
Mhm.
Like travel is a big thing for a lot of the millennials. They want to be able to travel the world and see the world.
Mhm.
To be able to send your kids to the best schools. That's kind of a Gen X thing, I think, more so. Like
Mhm.
the Gen X crowd was always like, or maybe even our parents were like, you got to send your kids to the best schools. You got to,
Mhm.
make sure they get a college degree. So this frees up cash to do
Right.
that.
Right.
And then number 5 is ask for action.
Mhm.
So you just, what's your offer? Like,
Yeah.
ask them for it.
Absolutely.
So this is, I mean, this is a good formula, right? So it's 5 steps.
Simple. Yeah.
Get their attention, show them how it's an advantage, prove what you just said, persuade people to grasp it. So you got to kind of dimensionalize it, apply it to their world,
Mhm.
and then ask them for whatever action you want them to take. Order the course, opt in. Like, I mean, typically on a sales letter, it's going to be buy whatever, buy the product, buy the
Yeah.
service, order the course, whatever it might be.
And I would say in today's copywriting, a 6, if you were to add number 6, it would be upsell.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I don't know about you, but every ad that I click on nowadays, and I mean, everything, just about. I mean, if it's a high ticket or if it's a decently ticketed item that especially if it's in the information industry, there's always going to be that upsell for like, oh, do you want, before you leave, are you sure you don't want this? We have a special offer on, our course for this. And I went through, I count like a couple of days ago, I bought a newsletter and I went through like,
47 upsells.
yeah, I'm going to say it was probably 7 upsell pages
Yeah.
before I finally clicked no, and I just want the monthly newsletter. So,
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. So we just finished a split test at the agency I work at. I'm not going to talk about the person or the product, but the original product was something you might want multiple units of. So on the control page or the original page, you could buy 1, you could buy 3, you could buy
yeah,
5,
right.
and obviously it got cheaper as you went,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
So we took that page and we split test against just 1 unit at a lower price. So basically, at the 5-unit price, we just did 1 unit at the 5-unit price.
Right.
And the 1 unit at a lower price got, for the same amount of traffic, got about 30 more buyers
Wow.
for the same amount of traffic. So it was
Mhm.
like 25% more buyers.
Mhm.
And then, going through the upsell flow and the total cash collected
Mhm.
at checkout was almost identical,
Mhm.
but we actually had more buyers so that we could sell long term. We could sell more stuff long term to them.
Okay.
So, and sometimes, and we were talking about like, so why did that work? Why did that not work? And my theory is if I have 1, 3, and 5 option
Mhm.
on a sales page, they've got to make 2 buying decisions.
Okay.
1, do I want to buy this product at all? And 2, how many units do I want to buy?
Mm.
Whereas if it's just 1 unit at a good price, I only really need to make 1 decision. Do I want to buy this or not?
Right.
Right. So then once they buy, now they're a buyer,
Mhm.
and the
Absolutely.
so the upsell, it's interesting. The upsell flow was fairly identical.
Mhm.
It was just the initial page was a lot lower when they had to make 2 choices as opposed to 1 choice.
Sure.
Which in hindsight makes sense, but
Mhm.
so we're going to roll that out to a couple other niches and see
Huh.
if that holds true. Like,
Right.
are we asking? Because it's really popular in supplements to do the 1, 3, 6 option.
Yes.
That's kind of been the gold standard for a while, but now I'm wondering, like, maybe we need to just do the lowest price we can possibly do to get a customer,
Right.
and then use the upsell sequence once they say yes, and go from there. So we're going to roll it out in our supplement
Cool.
brands and see what happens from there. But
Awesome.
But yeah, it's funny how it's kind of what we were talking about last episode. Like you could see things differently in hindsight than you can going forward. It's like a different part of your brain opens up.
Absolutely.
That's why you want to test and look at what you're doing, because you'll just see things you cannot see going forward.
Right.
All right. So let's talk about this last.
Yes.
I think this is, so it's funny. Tamara, actually, my wife, found this and she was talking about it. She was actually like laughing, reading the comments and stuff. I was like, send me that because I want to talk about it on the podcast tomorrow.
All right, let's pull it up.
So this is a company that sells, this is, as we're recording this, it's January 2021. So we're still in the COVID world, pandemic world.
Yes.
People are still wearing masks for most places. So this company sells masks, but they're going for the crowd that doesn't like wearing masks and thinks wearing masks is bad, wrong, unhealthy, whatever.
Yep.
Right. So their tagline, so it's called minimally-compliant-mask.com. Oh, wow. Right. So these people saw an opportunity. And their tagline basically on their homepage is masks for people who like oxygen and hate tyranny.
That's right.
So they were smart enough to realize at least half the country is only wearing masks because they're absolutely have to, but they hate it.
Right. Yeah.
So how can we sell to those people? They saw them, like any good entrepreneur, they saw an opportunity and they went after it.
Mm-hmm.
And when you launch a company like this, like you are going to get annihilated online.
Sure.
Right. So if you scroll down, Jonathan, on their page, there's a section. I love this.
Mask holes. Oh, yes.
Mask hole comments. Right. So. And I don't know where you stand. If you're listening to this, I don't know if you're for mask, against mask. It doesn't really matter. This is just a great. This is a great. I mean, you obviously
these are useless, right?
Yeah. Like
your store is idiotic and dangerous. You should be thoroughly embarrassed from the fact that you simply exist. I love that. I love that.
They're taking their most derogatory comments that they're getting online and they're posting them on their homepage as proof of what their masks stand for. Like, these masks are like super thin. Minimally compliant. Like, yeah, you're wearing a mask, but they don't actually do anything, and there's a whole segment of the population, probably half the country, that's like, I know I got to wear these to get into certain places. I don't like wearing them. I don't think they work. I don't think it matters. And, they noticed that and they made all these masks. Some of them are like fishnet stocking type masks. Others are like super thin material, so that you can actually breathe through them and they don't fog up your glasses. Like there's all kinds of little things that they found. But I love my favorite part is the mask hole comments.
Oh, I love these.
Where they take,
I mean, these are hilarious. Like, what is ID? I guess I don't know. Like, F you, I guess.
Yeah. It's like, I don't know. So here's, the comment is like, I don't know, like F you, I guess. Why would you sell these things to the idiots on the internet? And then like, how about this one? I hope you drown in your own blood, and I hope you have the effing decency to do it alone.
Wow.
Your store is idiotic and dangerous. You should be thoroughly embarrassed from the fact that you simply exist.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
But the people who agree with this store, that just like makes them want to buy them even more.
Because the compassion of you can see it just oozing out. The compassion of people that want you to wear a mask is just, it's amazing. I mean, it's just like I get tingly feelings, from
obviously, if you've been following this show very long, you know which side of the aisle we're on. But still, like what it takes to launch a site like this and to be willing to be this bold. I mean, a lot of people would be scared to death to do this and
Absolutely.
to take a stand like this.
I have to use
And
I have to use a Glengarry Glen Ross, Alec Baldwin. It takes brass balls.
absolutely. And you know, I mean, I have no idea what these people are doing as far as revenue or anything like that. I would love to, you know, reach out and
Good things,
maybe have
yeah.
them on.
Mhm.
But I mean, the fact is they saw a little niche. They know a lot of people don't like wearing masks. And they said, hey, we can make masks for people who don't like masks.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
but they didn't just say that. They said mask for people who like oxygen and hate tyranny. Like they didn't just say mask for people who don't like
Right.
masks. They said mask for people who like
Hey,
oxygen and hate
hey,
tyranny.
Right.
That is a perfect example of knowing your avatar.
Absolutely.
Like they 100% know their avatar. They know these people are out there and they're selling to them. And I think it's
Absolutely.
absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, they're selling to the crowd that says, you know what, I'm just over this because they're like me going to, and I wear my mask where I'm supposed to, like, but you go into the doctor today. When I went in for a physical, the guy says, well, even if you have even if you have a vaccine, you still need to wear your mask.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean,
so my question was, well, why?
yeah.
I thought I was supposed to be vaccinated. So it's just it's insane.
Yeah. So
And,
if you read,
I'll tell you this real quick, like, wearing these things, like when you're like going to the airport and going to places where you're in a hurry or you're like, not to mention where you're in a place where you're exercising. Cause I was out in Colorado 2 weeks ago. We're like hiking up a mountain and people are wearing masks, in the open air up,
yeah.
hiking up a mountain. So
Yeah.
this would have been perfect. I would have gladly worn something like this as opposed to nothing at all. I mean, as
Right.
opposed to one of the, something
Yeah.
that restricted my breathing.
I mean, scroll down to the About Us section, which is right below, I think, where you are.
Okay.
Where you
Oh,
are.
I see. Yeah.
So it says minimally compliant mask, which is the name of the company,
Mhm.
was created for people who cannot safely wear masks due to health concerns or simply refuse to comply with unconstitutional, unscientific mandates.
Right.
Right. So they understand that there's an entire world, and they probably believe this too, that think that, being required to do this is
Sure.
it's just unconstitutional. There's no real scientific basis for it.
Mhm.
And it's funny, like if you buy their stuff, I forgot where my wife was reading it. But in their FAQs, maybe is where it was. It said, like you need to wash these because, and they're like, yes, we believe the mold from wearing mask is more dangerous than COVID itself. So like even in their
Right. Yeah.
FAQs, they're like,
Yeah.
yeah, you still need to wash these because you don't want to be breathing your own crap in,
Right.
like all that kind of stuff. So like they go all in. Like there's no sitting on the fence with these people.
Yeah.
Like they're totally going all in. So and that's all about really understanding who you're selling to.
Absolutely.
And that's what makes this brilliant is that there's maybe they won't sell as many masks as somebody who's selling, bulk orders to whatever,
Mhm.
but their customers will be loyal. And I guarantee you these people could launch anything they want
Absolutely.
to this crowd that believes in freedom and, your own choice and all that kind of stuff. They could come out with 15 other products that would do this, have the same independent, patriot type feel, and they could spin that list into pretty
Yeah.
much anything they wanted.
Right.
So
Yeah. I love how they use some of the, some memes off of
yeah,
social media. Like
yep,
that's funny. Mask for thee, not for me.
yeah,
Uh, yeah, that's cool.
yeah. They know who they're talking to. I mean, that's the bottom line with this site. They know exactly who they're selling to, and they go all in on it.
Right.
They don't even try to appease or halfway do to. Well, I don't want to offend the people who do wear masks. They don't care. Like, no, we're going to actually offend the people who do wear masks for quote scientific reasons or whatever.
Yeah.
We're going all in on our customer who believes masks are ridiculous, whatever. And because of that, I mean, they're probably selling, tens of thousands of masks, per week or per
Sure.
day or whatever.
Absolutely. Oh,
And,
they're killing it. They're killing it.
Yeah. I mean, there's no way they're not.
Yeah.
So, and in
And
any
guess what?
niche,
In the age of like advertising on social media, I mean, who they're going after. They're not going after everybody. They're
no,
going after their target audience. So these ads, I don't know where they're getting these comments from. Obviously, there's trolls everywhere.
yeah,
Their ads aren't showing up in front of somebody that would just, be disgusted by this. Typically their audience is going to be the people that, are just over this to whatever degree.
But I can't remember who it is, but there's another company that kind of does something similar where they take all their negative comments, their negative reviews, and they spin them.
Oh yeah.
In a positive light.
Absolutely.
And instead of like trying to hide them or discount them or contradict them, they're like,
right.
Hey, here's, I think there was a ski resort that did that where somebody complained about the Black Diamond runs. I can't remember who it was, but it seems like that's it.
Sure.
So they like featured that on their website where people were complaining about how difficult something was. And they were like using that as a positive.
Yeah.
And I think every company could do that. I mean,
absolutely.
You have to, there's a reason, like even if you're a book author and people don't, it doesn't matter what you write. Somebody's going to hate it. Somebody's going to give you a bad review in the day of reviews, restaurants, whatever. Like you can embrace those reviews and turn them around and use them as fodder to like make your point.
Well, yeah. I mean, it just get like the ad that we featured at the very beginning of the show, the lazy man's way to riches. I mean, that'd be crucified today. I mean, people would be on Twitter just destroying that.
Yeah,
but that's okay.
You could take that and you could say, Joe from Wisconsin said, "There's no way this would work." Like you could actually like totally flip that comment,
absolutely
1-star review or whatever,
and
say, but he doesn't understand the secrets like you do. Like there's always a way to use even negative comments to your advantage.
No doubt.
So I think that's the big thing, man. We've eaten up another hour of the universe.
So much for will not go as long as our last episode, right?
Yeah, we just say that. Yeah, I mean we're getting in Joe Rogan territory now, where we just cannot possibly. Right. It's kind of like what was that? Sammy Hagar can't drive 55. Like we can't podcast under an hour.
Nope, can't do it.
It's just the way it is.
Well, we hope you've enjoyed it. We certainly have.
I have,
because we're always at the when our episode is over, we're at the bottom of the glass.
Yep, exactly.
So we've enjoyed it, as you know, for sure. And we hope everybody's gotten some good takeaways from this. In advertising and copywriting, it pays to be controversial, being a little different, getting attention. So whatever side you lean on, we just gave an example, which is a great example. But I mean, if you're on the other side, don't be afraid to be controversial in your advertising.
Yeah, I mean, you could have a mask company that made fun of the people who don't want to wear masks.
That's right. That's
right. About them being, senior killers or whatever. Like,
I think the worst thing you can do is try to, unless you're a big brand, which big brands can afford to kind of walk the line. But
I mean, it's biblical, right? I mean, it was the old like, don't be hot or cold. Don't be lukewarm. Be hot or cold. Like, don't be lukewarm.
Absolutely.
And that's hard. I think human nature is to try to straddle the middle and please everybody.
Yep.
But in advertising, that just doesn't work.
Never does.
All right.
Good stuff, man. Well, as always, you can find us over at persuasionbythepint.com. You can find us on all of your social media platforms. Listen, if you're a subscriber to the show, if you haven't left us, comments, reviews, please do so, because that's always good for us. And just to kind of tease you guys on the next episode coming up next week, we've got some really cool stuff. We've got a I'll go ahead and tease it, Sean. We've got a game designer.
Do it.
because we had on our previous episode Jack Turk. He was actually a former game designer, and we were talking to him actually after the show, but our audience didn't hear it. But we got a game designer coming up on our next episode. He's going to talk to us about QAnon and how.
Oh, I can't believe you said that out loud. Like now we're going to be banned.
Yeah, I better not post this on Facebook. Man, shoot, we're going to get banned off Facebook. But anyway, how game design is.
Well, we'll just go with conspiracy, like how
there you go.
Game design and conspiracy theories have a lot in common.
Yeah, they go hand in hand, actually.
Yeah.
So, and we'll have a game designer that's going to break it down on the psychology of gaming and how it kind of keeps us wrapped up from a psychological standpoint, keeps us basically addicted where we can't get away. We have to keep moving from one step to the next, and how that's really similar to conspiracies out there. You know, we all know someone that's it's a Q.
Yeah. I mean, that article you sent me was fascinating. So I can't wait to just like unwrap that. That's going to be fun.
And he's going to discuss that article with us because I sent him the link. So it'll be fun stuff. All right, guys. Thanks again. And as always, have a great weekend. Persuasionbythepint.com. We'll see you next time.
See ya.
All right.